Here I am. Well, we're back again. How's everybody doing? And since this one is going to be going up uh, right after my spook video, I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was a fun thing, and I have the intergalactic telephone here still ready. Testing, and then I put my ear to it to see if I get a feedback, just in case we get an intergalactic call again from whomever, whatever. We never know what's going to happen with the Melvinator kind of deal. Well, from this point on, anyway. Somebody asked me to do a video again on triggers, and I know I've done a video on it in the past, and I went back and checked, and sure enough, it's there. However, since then and now, my own perception and how I see, sense, and feel triggers has changed. It's evolved. So therefore, this is what I like about a habit that I have of not deleting my older videos. For exactly this reason, it shows me and it shows my path of evolution as I've been going along on my YouTube channel, which gives indication that I'm actually doing something and that I'm actually growing and I'm actually evolving, which is a good thing for me. But I think it's very important also, if I can send a message to other YouTubers out there, if you are doing this type of, in the New Age community, spiritual community, that you stop deleting your older videos, because if you have any skill at all and you have any talent and you actually tapped into viable information, that information is going to be valuable down the road also. So don't do that. Leave your videos up. Don't delete them, like I know some people have done. They are valuable, and they will be valuable for people, because we're not all waking up at the same time, and we're not all on the same page. And I'm not reaching a lot of people who are beginners and just starting out on the opening of the heart center and getting into the connection with people. Okay, now I'd like to go a little bit different way here when I'm talking about triggers, because it is a very important factor, and a couple of things that I want to mention here prior to kind of getting into it. And it's this: when we began our spiritual awakening, the usual event that happens is the heart center, and I'm not going to go into a whole pile of details with it. But the heart center opened, or gave us access to, energetically speaking and physically speaking, the soul, the whole state of consciousness, the whole you, the super consciousness, the super mind, the whatever. But what it did was it gave us access to it, but it also kind of cleaned out a lot of the old patterns and a lot of the old innuendos, not necessarily from this particular lifetime or lifeline, whatever term is more comfortable for you, but it did do some of that. Now, because of the process of evolution, we are continually evolving. And many of you have heard me say that the most important event, bar none, on this planet that will make the difference ultimately down the road in every area of our life. There isn't an area on this planet or anywhere in our society that is not affected by the formulation, the construction, and the manifestation and the offshoots of relationships. It is that simple. This is not complicated. Not complicated. If we're ever going to change and evolve on this planet, we have to change and evolve through relationships. And this is exactly why this particular heart center experience has happened, for that reason. So what's taking place at this particular point is we've reached a point now where we've gone through a period of changes, all right, where we're beginning to shift from what I call the emotional experience of love, relationship, and sexuality And the triggering process that you see taking place with so many people right now that's going on is based on the emotional process of love, relationship, and sexuality. Those are the triggers that are coming out. They're coming out. And they're coming out of the emotional body. So, the other thing that's taken place is that along the way, what has happened is with the awakening of the heart center chakra, there's some other events that have taken place also. And that is the activation or the stimulation, if you will, of the mental body. Now, the mental body is the, shall we say, the thinking part of us. We use the mental body. We construct, remodel, take in, regurgitate, spit out, change, modify, everything with the mental body. But the mental body can be influenced by the emotional body. And what has happened at this particular point is we are being given back the power, as it were, to be free. But in order to be free, creative, and expressive, we have to go through puberty, spiritual puberty. And that's what we're going through. And triggering actually is a blessing. It is a gift. If you're going through it and you're finding it difficult, because I did, if I watched this video when I was going through it, I would have thought this guy you're listening to is nuts, literally, to talk this way. Because I remember when I was being triggered and triggered lots, and even up into about 3 years ago, I was still being triggered quite often, not as much as I used to be, but still quite often. So what's happening at this particular point is the triggering aspect, and here I'm going to go into the relationship aspect of it, and specifically I'm going to go into the twin flame connection because that's the most popular venue at this particular point. One of the things that I've noticed that about Facebook, I find that Facebook is kind of like the astral planes. You can pretty much go on Facebook and find anything you're looking for and everybody who's doing it. And if you go into a particular Facebook group, it doesn't matter where you go. Every group, you'll notice, will have rules and regulations that they apply. And the one thing that they all want everybody to do is to be nice, play nice, behave nice, say nice things, don't say anything that would hurt anybody's feelings, and don't judge or criticize or any of that kind of stuff. So when you read all of that stuff, it doesn't leave a hell of a lot, does it? It's kind of like, well, I can't say anything. So this is kind of like a defense mechanism that's taking place to try and avoid the triggering process that inevitably is going to happen anyway. So to kind of drive that home a little bit more, take a look at the twin flame episode that's going on the planet right now. And you will see a lot of you who have been in, and it can happen in a soulmate connection also, just a little bit lesser intense. And I find that a lot of people who want to run back into a soulmate connection just don't have the courage and the wherewithal or the information to be able to handle the challenge that they've been given in the twin flame connection. So maybe this video will help them out a little bit. When you have the twin flame connection, and many of you know how intense it can be, and you all know you have that period of the bubble of when everything's beautiful and wonderful and everything else that goes along with it. And as I said before, that's giving you a sample of what's available in a relationship between two people. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen between you and the person that originally happened with. When I made that statement in a video, everybody thought I was crazy. Because can you have more than one twin flame? You can have a completely compatible frequency match all the way through with more than one person. And people will understand that after, and that statement alone will trigger some of you for a defense mechanism comment. It will. I know it will. But this is simply a fact that I have found out. So when the triggering starts in a twin flame connection, one of the things that I constantly hear from people, men and women, why is this happening? Why is it was so good and now it's got so bad? Because you're experiencing both aspects of the spectrum, the highest end and the lowest end. And in order to get to the highest end on a consistent and permanent basis, you have to eliminate from yourself all of the aspects that would impede, block, or stop the progression of the evolutionary process. The problem is that I find with a lot of people is they're not understanding the process. And one of the things I did was, I think in the last video that I did, I said to people, if you're in this thing where you're triggering yourself, you and your twin flame are constantly triggering each other and you're arguing and fighting, don't take it personally. That in itself is a challenge for almost everybody. And they say to me, Mel, how do you not take it personally? You not take it personally by finding some information that's giving you understanding, and then taking it personally is because you don't have any other beliefs or information to give you anything concrete to stand on in that particular perspective. So when you're triggering someone else, it actually has a benefit to you. It is of benefit because it's releasing an energetic pattern within the emotional body, but it also allows the mental body to begin to expand. And I want to touch on this little thing here for a moment, just for a second, so you can kind of grasp the concept. A great many of you who have been in the twin flame connection, this happens in soulmates and happens in life in general also. It's not just relegated to twin flame, but the intensity in the twin flame connection makes it very, very prominent to people. And it's this, in the twin flame connection, some of you are observing very enhanced creative abilities or mental abilities. You're able to do things with your mind. One of them, all right, with mind being mental body, is you're able to telepathically communicate with your twin, obviously initially in the beginning. Then you find out you may be able to do this with other people also. Or you're able to do body jumping. Now, when I first mentioned body jumping in a previous video, a whole pile of people got their panties in a knot and their nose out of joint, okay, because I was talking about something that didn't even make any sense to them. You can't jump into another person's body. Oh, yes, you can jump into another person's body. And you have people who have these really intense creative abilities that have gotten enhanced through the twin flame connection. Now, just let me think of another example here. Let's assume that you can go out and your energy field is so impressive and so big that it affects other people around you, and people are getting either uncomfortable around you and they don't know how to react because they've never experienced anything before like that. So they are going to go say, I don't know if you've ever happened this to you, but you just go someplace and, you know, all of a sudden you didn't even do anything. You just kind of showed up and suddenly somebody's attacking you. Like, what the hell did I do? You didn't do anything. Okay. But can you imagine what would happen if somebody was attacking you simply because you're there and you still had belief systems of defend within you, but you now have access to all of this power and energy? You're able to, if you wanted to, jump into that person's body. You're able to telepathically communicate with them. Now, can any of you kind of grasp where I'm going with this and what potentially dangerous things could happen? If you wanted to go on the defense and you have these kinds of abilities at your mental disposal, mental access, never mind disposal, at your mental access, and you had trigger points, you could end up killing somebody or impressing them with your mental abilities and causing great pain and discomfort within their body because you can telepathically connect with the different parts of their body. People, you need to start seeing this kind of stuff and start seeing the triggering process as a gift that never stops giving, because it's part of the process. And people say, well, if we're having an open heart center and all this stuff, why do we have to go through all of this stuff? And the reason we have to go through it all is because you're living in three-dimensional reality. And you have to do this on your own. If you came here in this particular timeline, you came here for that reason. You came here to go through this evolutionary process that is happening on this planet, and you came from many different parallel universes and dimensions and timelines to experience it. And the sooner we begin to accept that fact, the sooner the process will become that much easier. Because we're not going to be given these mental abilities to be able to project, to be able to put our consciousness into different objects and control them, unless we can do it responsibly. And you can't go around having these creative abilities and everything else, and suddenly someone says something that ticks you off and you retaliate because they triggered you. You could be dangerous not only to other people, but you can be really dangerous to yourself. Literally. You've heard me say this before in videos, and you've heard other people say this. Be careful what you ask for, you may get it. In other words, be careful what you think about, because you may manifest it. All right? How many people do you know right now on this planet who are literally making themselves sick, who are literally creating diseases in their life, who are literally creating situations in their life? Because of this. How many people do you know who are doing this right now? I went into a Facebook the other day, all right, Facebook group, and I'm looking at some of the comments and some of the statements that people are making, all right? And I don't know, ladies, if you know this or not, but I'm going to speak to you for a moment here. And this is not in general the ladies that are come to this channel, but hopefully one or two that don't come to the channel will actually get access to this. But when I go into some of these Facebook groups, and understand something now, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of twin flame groups on Facebook right now. There are literally thousands of people, and I mean thousands, probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in these twin flame Facebook groups. And you know what? 99% of them are all women. And that's a fact. And 85% of the content of them is attacking the male gender. Now think about all of those thousands and thousands and thousands of women in twin flame Facebook groups, all attacking the male gender. And I'm not saying that they're not justified. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, ladies, you're in a position here of leadership where you can clear out a lot of these patterns and buttons and templates, but you keep recreating more of this stuff. You don't see it. Because when you go in and you start presenting this type of information, you hit the buttons of other people. You trigger other people to bring this stuff out also. So in triggering the other people, you're creating yet more of the same situation by triggering it. If, on the other hand, you had an equal amount of men in there, and you were attempting to trigger a particular male in reference to that, masculine, feminine, in the twin flame connection, what is happening when the triggering takes place, it's an attempt to try to balance the masculine and feminine energy between the two individuals. It has nothing to do. You see, here's the other issue. is the ultimate goal of the twin flame connection, the bubble love phase, and especially the triggering phase, which causes separation in a lot of people. And, you know, it's not really a separation. It's just the energy is not possible at that time for the two people to grow and evolve. Neither one of them. But one always blames the other. And in most cases, it's always the male that gets the blame. He's this, or he's that, or he's this, or he's that kind of thing. So there's no balance of energy. The triggering process is exactly for that purpose, to create a sense of balance within an individual. And how many times, let me put it another way so that you can kind of grasp it, how many times, leaving the spiritual side of it out altogether, and you go on and you watch television, and you see now everybody now is wanting to become so politically, spiritually, and religiously correct in statements. You need a manual at this particular point to find out what you could say, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, what you can't say. What is a religiously acceptable? What is politically acceptable? What is culturally acceptable? I'll give you an example of that. Here in Canada, for all of the years that I've been here, and that's quite a few of them, on the 25th of December, it was always Merry Christmas. All of a sudden, I found out a couple of years ago that that's not really acceptable anymore. Because we're a multicultural society, season's greetings is now applicable. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, I think that triggered me. It did. So I look at it and I say to myself, okay, this has brought up a situation with me, and I find myself getting a little upset about this. Why should I have to change what I've been expressing for so many years? Kind of thing. So I decided that I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm going to go ahead and say what I need to say anyway. So I do that. The other thing that is important to remember is when you go up on YouTube, especially when you come to our channel here, I don't know how many times I've had people say to me and come back a year, 2, 3 years later, Mel, you really pissed me off. You really trigger me. You know what? I am so grateful when I trigger people. It's not even funny. The more I trigger them, the better off they're going to be in the long run. They're not like me, but they're going to be better off in the long run. The triggering process is so important right now because we need to get away and separate from all of this aspect of the emotional body. And I'm going to explain to you why. All right? The emotional body is an energy field that is directly related to three-dimensional reality. And this is going to shock some people. We can't ascend as a species unless we can assimilate the energy of the emotional body into a higher state of consciousness. We can't do that because the physical body, the emotional body, from birth. Now remember, the heart center chakra has taken care of everything prior to birth. It is cleaned out all of the triggers, so to speak. From birth and thereon, we're going through a process based on the relationships that birthed us into physical reality. We become the containment field of the belief systems of the culture, religious indoctrination, belief systems, political structures, etc., 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 of where we live on the planet. So that by the time we become an adult, we have become nothing more than an emotional mishmash of pre-recorded behavior patterns dictated to by emotional triggers and buttons deposited in the emotional body for no other purpose than the set behavior according to the whims and fancies of other people who dictate as such. So therefore, for our relationship concept, male, female, whatever aspect or gender you want, put them in combination of two, in order for these to evolve and to become responsible and to be able to use the mental abilities and characteristics that we were going to evolve, the process entails that one, the emotional body must divest itself of all of the belief systems from the emotional experience of love, relationship, and sexuality, and that covers everything. All diseases, all mental disorders, everything. Then, when a certain amount of that has happened through triggering, the mental body can then begin to express what is then necessary to be able to deal with it via the gift of the heart center, which is what I call spiritual maturity, which comes from the evolution of the heart center chakra, bestowed upon the mental body, and started to express through the emotional experience of divesting itself of the belief systems patterns of love relationship in three-dimensional reality. Is this making sense? Of course it is, otherwise I wouldn't be saying it, would I? So now I'm in the stream. You recognize it? Took me a few minutes to get there, but now I'm in the stream. So when this happens, the triggering process becomes very positive. Now, when something happens that triggers you, the idea that you need to do is to not look at the person that triggered you as the enemy. The only enemy is the result that happened in you. Because you should be in a position to say anything you want at the level of consciousness that you are at, that if the other person has reached that level of spiritual maturity and has the mental stability and balance of masculine and feminine, it won't even fizz on them. I'll give you an example. I recently had a very dear friend of mine who made a comment on one of my Facebook posts that the material involved was out of date and of no use. And 2 or 3 years ago, I would have taken that personally, and it would have really hit my button. But I looked at the comment, and it didn't even fizz on me. There was no response whatsoever. One, because I already knew that the material was not out of date because I did it 5 years ago. And two, I know for a fact that none of my material, and some of my material on YouTube is 11 years old, none of it's out of date. The only thing that's happened is the passage of time and the evolution of people going through it. So nothing I have ever done on YouTube is out of date. Nothing I have ever done on Blog Talk Radio is out of date. It's still relevant. So for me, that made it possible not to take it personally. Now, to give you an example, how bad it used to be for me, and I want you to know that I've got a handle on it. And I know what triggers me, and I know what doesn't trigger me, and there's not much left that triggers me. Really. Well, there's one thing, but I'm not going to tell anybody, all right? And it's not that I'm working on it, I'm aware of it, and that's all that needs to be done. But to give you an example is, in the past, and this happened when I was about 46 or 47, I had a reporter come from one of the local colleges and wanted to do a article in their college paper about the local channeler, spiritual teacher, meditation, advisor, all that kind of stuff. And she did. And then to get a opposite view, She wanted to go to one of the ministers in town in the church and get the perspective from him. Well, somehow he managed to get a hold of the copy of the paper that put out, the issue that I did, and he didn't spend any time at all other than picking on me the whole time that he did it. Well, when I read it, I was crushed because I said, how can a member of the church go at somebody in such a vile, disgusting, and very mean way? I was crushed. I actually went in the bedroom and I kind of crawled in the closet kind of thing and sat there and cried my eyes out, literally, because I felt so attacked. But something came out of that, and I realized something very quickly, especially for me, and this is just for me in reference, that if I was going to continue to do this work, I was going to have to get used to this kind of stuff. That this was going to continually happen, and it has. It's continued to happen. There's no way you're going to get up on YouTube, and there's no way I'm going to say anything that everybody's going to like what I have to say. And there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with me, and I like that when people disagree with me. I don't care if they disagree with me, because I understand what's happening. I hit their button for some reason. So as you go along in the triggering process, what happens is you'll get to a point where you achieve what I call a level of understanding. I'm going to use the word understanding. And when you see someone who is attempting to trigger you, and there are people who do this, all right? Especially I notice, for me personally, I love it when it happens. I can see it coming every time. There are people who kind of know me as, a spiritual teacher, if you want to call me that, okay? And there are some who like to see if they can trigger me. I know it, all right? I don't fall into it at all, because I understand what's going on, and the triggering process simply means something is amiss at their end. There's nothing amiss at my end that I don't know about, in this sense. So once you understand the triggering process, it becomes a lot easier to go through it. So when you understand that, going out and not saying anything in a group is a bad thing. You can go into a twin flame group, and if you say anything out of context, you're going to get booted out anyway. I got booted out of lots of them. So that's why I don't say anything anymore. I just go in and peruse around, post a video up sneaky, and I leave. Because there's no point. You can't force anything on anybody. What you can do is you can put out information that triggers them. Triggering creates that response in the emotional body. Why? Because the emotional body, like I said, is that big reservoir of energy. I don't know anyone at this particular point who's not in the evolutionary process, who has an open heart center chakra, who doesn't have a huge emotional body. Why do they have a huge emotional body? Because they have all of that heart center energy coming out, and it's filling, and it's enhancing, and it's exploding and expanding the mental body, the emotional body, the etheric body. It's obvious. So the emotional body, which has been there the longest and has had suffered the most programming, is the biggest and the most dominant. Because that's what we've been on this planet. We've been dominated. Every time we turn around, somebody is trying to dominate something or take away a freedom or get this from us or that from us. That's why we have all of this stuff going on in computer land. People hacking this, people scamming that, people trying to hustle you this, people trying to take you advantage. You can't go into your email box on a day and you haven't got somebody in there trying to hustle you or scam you. And it triggers you after a while to not even want to go on the computer. So the only way we're going to change this is for those. Now, I want everybody to pay attention to this. The only way we're going to change that out there is for all of us in the spiritual community, in the twin flame community, and other spiritual group on the planet, is to really get into this triggering thing. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of us in these groups. Once we understand that triggering is necessary and we allow it to happen more often in the groups, so people can actually clear themselves, kind of thing, the quicker it's going to happen in the general population. And this is the final thing that I'm going to say on the video. And if there are any requests for additional stuff, and just remember, just before I go here, that the pattern of triggering is going to happen to everyone. There are no exceptions. I don't care how pure you think you are, how evolved you think you are. You are not going to go into higher states of consciousness much less. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Thank you. There's one more thing that I need to mention here, and I forgot. Thank you. In regards to the physical body, the ascension process dictates that a lot of people are going to almost complete the ascension process while still in the physical body. That means that the physical body, and many of you are experiencing this now, changes in the digestive system, changes in the reproductive part of the body, changes in the whole of your cardiovascular system, changes in your brain function, changes in the hormone, changes in the glandular section of the body. Why is all of this happening? As you clear out the triggers and these belief systems via the triggers in the emotional body, the body physical can then do what it's supposed to do, is it can become an appropriate vehicle for a highly evolved individual in a higher perennial state of consciousness with mental abilities manifesting through heart center chakra in a creative mode that can change the whole content of this planet. So the cellular and molecular structure of your body is beginning to change and evolve as you continue to release these triggers. So the more you release them and the faster you release them, the better it's going to be. This is the one thing that I've said to twin flames when they start triggering each other, because of the intensity of it. It's really intense. I know. I've been there. It's very intense. Very intense is not quite the word I would use. Very intense. And what's happening is you're releasing stuff. And you're releasing stuff very quickly. That's coming out of the body. That means predestined illnesses, predestined mental problems, predestined emotional problems, predestined outcomes in your physical world and reality can all be changed. They're not dictated to you anymore by these old belief systems that are now being triggered to come out of you. So your body physical can then become the appropriate vehicle that it is. And the brain function can begin to expand, and new avenues and new areas of both hemispheres of the brain can begin to open up and be triggered. How many of you out there, sorry, I'm getting a little bit more into it here, but it's interesting. How many of you out there right now have been experiencing a lot of interesting and strange phenomena going on in your head? How many? Why is that happening? The phenomena taking place in your body will be in direct relationship to the triggers you have released from the emotional body, so that the energy of the emotional body can then be assimilated by the physical. Oh, this is a marvelous mechanism we got going on here. And into the cellular and molecular structure, to the bloodstream, the organs of the body for higher function. Now, do I know what I'm talking about or what? And there you go. So, okay, I went on a little longer. I know some of you can't handle much more than about 15 minutes of a video. Really, for some of you, you're really going to have to start acquiring attention span a little bit longer than a fruit fly. You really are. Okay, you're watching too much stuff in the short-term entertainment thing, and you're going to have to learn that you can learn a lot. I don't know how some of you actually sit in any kind of a class. If you can't sit for more than 15 minutes before you got to move on to the next piece of entertainment, you got something wrong with your attention span. You're watching too much TV, or you're spending too much time with your thumb doing this kind of deal. Have a great day, everybody. Love you all.